Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's a pleasant morning here in the southwest, and although I should be heading back to Mission Springs Protection Camp later today. And first of all, congratulations to those who have locked on this morning at Tinker Lane. I gather it's been quite a long night there, and that the cutting crew are already on site. But if you are in the Nottinghamshire area, if you're around Blythe or Barnby Moor or Bawtry, or in any of the communities within that vicinity, even if you're in another county, please do get along and show your support to those that have committed to trying to delay iGas at Tinker Lane. And you'll meet some absolutely wonderful people. Well, they probably will be the ones not wearing uniform. Well, the title of this morning's broadcast is Sir Jim Ratcliffe, are you fracking kidding me? Really? This is something that is truly outrageous, and it hasn't gone uncommented on in the Scottish press. And this is from the Daily Record. So here's what the Daily Record has to say about the announcement that Jim Ratcliffe has been knighted in the birthday honours. The billionaire boss of petrochemical giants Ineos has been made a knight, sparking fury after his involvement in a series of controversial industrial disputes. The UK's richest man, Jim Ratcliffe, who once drew up plans to sack 1,400 workers whilst relaxing on his £130 million yacht, will become a Sir for his services to business and to investment. But the gong has not gone down well amongst critics of his conduct at Grangemouth. Labour MSP Neil Findlay said, "Here is evidence of why some people are very critical of the honours system." No shit, Sherlock. Ratcliffe is a man who has a desire to frack the entire central belt of Scotland with no regard to the environmental consequences, let alone the health consequences. He is the man who single-handedly sought to hold the country to ransom with his outrageous behaviour at Grangemouth. Ratcliffe's knighthood has been awarded for ripping up the rights of the workforce who, let us never forget, are the ones who made his billions for him. Ruthless Ratcliffe was born in Manchester and grew up in a council estate. And he has battled with workers, unions and government bosses in his rise to the top of business. The divorced dad of two is nicknamed Dr. No by union bosses and JR after the notorious TV oil baddie JR Ewing by other detractors. He topped the UK's rich list after his wealth grew from 15 billion to 21 billion. The staggering rise is down to the success of Ineos, the London-based firm, who last year bought the Forties pipeline system that now delivers almost 40% of the UK North Sea oil into the country. Ratcliffe is currently locked in a legal battle with the Scottish Government over the temporary block on fracking they announced in 2015. And he made waves in 2013 for the tough line he took with workers at Grangemouth, the country's biggest industrial site. After a dispute over the suspension of a shop steward, he closed the plant and vowed to walk away for good unless workers accepted major cuts to their pensions and their working conditions. At the time, we told how he conducted the operation while holidaying on his super yacht in the French port of La Clotte. In June 2014, he snubbed 6-year-old Rory Cottier's appeal for a donation to help build a play park in Oban. But after the Record told of the lad's disappointment, Ratcliffe was forced into a U-turn and stumped up £1,000, which of course he probably got from, down the back of the sofa or whatever. I mean, that is chump change to the likes of Jim Ratcliffe. And, this is the guy who openly lobbied against the plastic bag tax, the 5p plastic bag tax. Why? Because he is one of the primary producers of this toxic product that most of which, of course, ends up in landfill or in the sea. He also lobbied the government to outlaw any strike action against changes to pension plans. And this is a guy who has the largest chemical plant, refinery plant in the UK at Grangemouth, and treats the workers as though literally they were no better than slaves. In fact, if we look at the salaries in Falkirk, the average salary in Falkirk is £21,514. And that is barely two-thirds of the national average, and it's actually below what is regarded as the minimum living wage in this country. So, the reality is that this guy is certainly not a philanthropist by any stretch of the imagination. It's all very well him stumping up 25 million, which again is just chump change for him, 25 million to the London Business School, which seems to be the most significant charitable donation that he's made, which is, of course, where he got his MBA, which I'm sure he perceives launched him onto his career. Now, I certainly have nothing against entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs who do extremely well should also recognize that they have a responsibility to the community. But what we have with the likes of Sir Jim Ratcliffe is just out and out greed. This is rampant corporatism at its very worst. It is the most significant illustration of someone who effectively really doesn't give a monkey's about those who are effectively contributing to his wealth. He simply sees them as a necessary evil, and if he could automate it, he would in a heartbeat, and he probably will, of course, over the next decade or so. But I mean, let's have a look at the situation in Falkirk, because Falkirk has some 2,500 people on benefits. That's 1,600 men, 865 women. And the highest proportion of those are in the 18 to 24-year-old age group. Now, if Sir Jim Ratcliffe had any kind of social conscience whatsoever, then he would be looking to finance some kind of training facility or education facility to ensure that the youth within the community with which he draws his labour force are actually getting prepared for adult life, for living, unfortunately, in this sad economy that we have got in the UK, where people literally, sadly, have to work pretty much every hour under the sun just to keep a roof over their head and food on the table. And those, the one area that I must confess I do actually agree with Jim Ratcliffe is getting out of the EU. And I mean, unfortunately, as I predicted, some 2 years ago now, the game plan would be to manipulate the ballot so that we were just out, and then to destroy the fabric of the country to get the people of the country gagging to get back in. And of course, when you get back in, then it's on their terms, and basically it's a total subjugation of the UK to the EU. So but we have very, very different philosophies pretty much on everything else. And it is a very, very sad reflection that somebody can accumulate this kind of wealth and literally just milk it for their own self-gratification. So, Jim Ratcliffe, people are going to know the guy's name, of course, not least if he manages to buy Chelsea Football Club off of Roman Abramovich. Not satisfied with FC Lucerne, which he acquired last September. He clearly wants to get into British soccer, which, hey, do it. Because, once your name is a household name, then it actually makes it a lot easier to draw attention to the business attributes, inverted commas, of INEOS and the destruction that Jim Ratcliffe wants to bring about in the country. So obviously, as that Daily Record article said, he's trying to sue the Scottish government for not being able to pursue, and I quote, his human right to frack across the central belt of Scotland. You couldn't make this up, could you? And of course, he is looking to frack right across the north of England, with 3 areas being specifically targeted in South Yorkshire and North Derbyshire. So, meanwhile, of course, the work of Professor Peter Stiles seems to be somewhat prescient, because yet another significant seismic event, for the UK that is, occurred just off the coast of the East Riding of Yorkshire, where there was seismic activity to the tune of 4.0 on the Richter scale on Saturday afternoon, I believe it was. And, it was not a tsunami-inducing event, didn't cause a significant damage, but nonetheless, it is quite significant for the UK. And of course, just a few months ago, on the 17th of February, we had a 4.4 earthquake just off the, it was just inland from Swansea in South Wales. Now, before anybody jumps to a conclusion, it is extremely unlikely that these seismic events are in any way related to unconventional hydrocarbon exploitation. But what it is doing is it is a very, very significant reminder, as pointed out by Professor Peter Stiles. Did I say David Smythe earlier? Well, Professor Peter Stiles, who has further developed actually a lot of the work of Professor Smythe. And, what it's indicating is that his concern about fracking beneath the heavily mined coal seams of northern England is, one that we should actually be concerned about. And especially, when we look at Ollerton in Nottinghamshire, which is effectively the earthquake capital of the UK. Now, generally, they are very minor seismic events, but they are extremely prolific. And of course, once you start messing around with the geology beneath these coal seams, then the likelihood is that Professor Peter Stiles is going to be proven to be absolutely spot on. And, we still have the situation, of course, where Greg Clark is due to sign off or not the application by Quadrilla to frack at Preston New Road. And as we pointed out on Fracking Nightmare last Thursday, and I still say that I think last Thursday's episode of Fracking Nightmare, that was episode number 116, is quite possibly the most important episode that I have produced to date. And the communities in Lancashire really do need to either take a look at that episode or do their own research and recognize that basically pretty much everybody, the emergency services, the local authority, and central government, are extremely remiss in not addressing the issues of emergency response in the event of a major situation arising, such as the blowout that occurred at Powhatan Point in Ohio last February. And of course, that blowout, and let's remember that there's a lot of experience of blowouts in the US, because sadly they are quite a regular occurrence, and it still took the wild well control specialists 3 weeks to deal with that blowout in Powhatan Point. And we have very, very limited experience in the UK. In fact, of course, the only major blowout that we've experienced is Piper Alpha. There have been minor incidents which have been covered up, and more of that in a future episode of Fracking Nightmare. But we don't have the expertise resident in this country. So any specialist team would likely have to be flown in from the US. And what's the arrangements for the local community in the event of a blowout. Basically, there's nothing in place. And if there is, it's certainly not being communicated to the wider community. So, well, that's it from me today. It's hodding up, literally and metaphorically. No doubt, people from all around the country will be expressing their shock and absolute horror and disbelief that a rampant corporatist like Jim Ratcliffe is recognised in the birthday honours list. Basically, it seems that, on one hand, we give out a few token awards for philanthropy, for service to the community. But in reality, the bulk of the awards are saved for those who basically we just need to keep paying their taxes in this country. Although, of course, if Jim Ratcliffe doesn't get what he wants, then he throws the toys out the pram and moves the headquarters of the company to Switzerland or wherever. So, you know the world we're living in. There's no natural justice being applied by those who think that they are the rightful rulers of a planetary fiefdom. And sadly, I know that the vast majority of people watching this know this to be the case. Our challenge is to work out precisely what it is that we need to do to bring about the changes that we all know we need to see. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll be back with you tomorrow morning at 8:30. Take care now.